Good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Augustine. I am a business advisor for the North Central Texas Business Development Center, Small Business Development Centers, which is a leading provider for assistance in small businesses. We are grant funded, which allows us to offer services at no cost. QuickBooks Online and Apps with Stacy Kildall and Bryce Forney today. We're looking forward to hearing a few more things about how QuickBooks interacts. In fact, if you're going to have a lot of questions as we go, so please put them in the chat room and we will be happy to respond to those as we go or whenever Stacy and Bryce have an opportunity to do it. They love the interaction when you have good questions, so please don't shy away from going ahead and throwing it in the chat box. Okay, and for today's, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I just want to let you know that these are two experts when it comes to QuickBooks and managing money for companies, and I'm going to allow them to give a brief introduction themselves. Please welcome Bryce and Stacy.
Thanks, Brett.
Super. Thank you very much. I'm going to just get the share going here. So we're going to talk about apps, and one of the things that I think is great about today in our final session in the series is that third-party apps, we're going to talk a lot about really the process and the consideration behind apps. We're also going to talk about the connection, but this compared to other topics is a little lighter, a little fluffier, so it shouldn't be as intense as some of the other topics that we've covered.
And the other thing to remember is this is really more about teaching you where to find them and how to connect them and how to vet them to see if they're going to work for your business, as opposed to you should use this app, because that's what we get. Bryce and I have been teaching these webinars for a really long time, and across the board, what we most commonly hear is, but which one should I use? And so that's a question, and we'll get into it a little bit later. It's a really difficult question to answer.
But we hope to be able to teach you to answer that on your own.
Exactly. Yes, exactly that. Do you want me to introduce myself, or are you gonna go first? Okay.
I would allow yourself to introduce yourself.
Oh, please allow myself to introduce myself. My name is Stacy Kildall, and I live in Michigan, and I own and operate Kildall Services, LLC. We're a full-service bookkeeping company. I'm currently at the library, which is why I have the ethereal lighting behind me, and I might be speaking not quite as loudly as I usually do, but I have been a member of Intuit's Trainer and Writer Network since 2005, and I think that is about it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Bryce Forney, and I am a CPA in the San Francisco East Bay Area. Like Stacy, I'm also mobile. I was actually at the library yesterday for some amount of time. I do, at times, I do laps around the Bay, and yesterday was one of those days. So I spend a lot of time in Courtyard by Marriott branded hotels because they offer Wi-Fi. They have coffee. It's just a great place to work. So.
And they let you just camp, and they let you laptop camp. They let you do it. There's some hotels who they will not let you on the Wi-Fi unless you have a room number. So
right, yeah. So they're very inviting, and so I do the exchange. I tend to get coffee and oatmeal and make it a win-win. So with that, I am going to turn my video off for this because I'm sharing from a second monitor, so I would be not looking at you anyway. And really, it's important, we feel, to focus on what we're showing on the screen. So this is our overall agenda. And as we mentioned at the outset, this is really about the process of identifying and validating and testing a third-party app and determining the right app for you. So we're going to start with just some general benefits. The tenets is the phrase that's used here. So these are the principles around consideration of a third-party app. We know that we've got all of these great features built into QuickBooks Online. And for core accounting, almost everything you're going to want to do is already built into QBO. But there are examples of where we want a separate application for a specific process because of the industry in which the company operates, or the size of the company, or just keeping the right and wrong people out of keeping the the wrong people out of QBO and
Right.
using a third-party app.
Yeah, not everybody in an organization needs to have access to QuickBooks. So, yeah.
So the general idea is, like anything that the business is going to assess, you want to make sure that the cost benefit is there for the business. So if a business is just starting out, and even though there may be an app that's a lot of fun, it may not make sense to justify the cost of an app. Most of the time, once a business has a need for a third-party app, I'm trying to think of a good example that might set the stage for. I mean, I'm thinking of QuickBooks Time, which is kind of a third-party app. I mean, it's owned by Intuit, so I guess it's
Right.
really a first-party app, but it's separate. QuickBooks Time is really a separate site where employees and contractors go to enter time that then gets used in payroll and for invoicing customers. So that's an example of an app where there's a lot of great features of the app. For the employee, they get to enter time on their mobile device, so that you don't have to have a kiosk or some sort of system set up at the business.
Right.
So it's easy to justify the price of the third-party app, because these
I
are,
think
yeah.
I was going to say another good example would be expense reporting. So
Mhm.
if you have, like I have a client and they are an adventure course. They do adventure course building, and they have adventure courses. And so and they train teams to work at adventure courses. And so they have a pretty decent sized sales team where they are incurring expenses as they're traveling, or their crew that's going out and doing the building or doing the training. And so they have a third party app that they can use to record all of their business related expenses. And the way that they use it isn't necessarily so that they can get reimbursed, but they're using it so that everything gets coded correctly and assigned to the right expense accounts, and they're using class tracking. So I think the time tracking, like you mentioned, and something like an expense reporting app are really good examples of this. Absolutely positively justifies the cost of the app.
Not to mention that there are times where the business needs an app to get uh, better accounting information, or just more clear, correct, concise accounting information. So in some cases, third-party apps that are important for a business, the benefits may be lost on the business owner, actually. So there may be some convincing where it's to offset a consultant who would have to come in and work with the business to do cleanup. And I think the example Stacy gave of the expense reporting app is absolutely in the crosshairs of that.
Yeah.
So so
And the
third
other thing that I
parties, go
like
ahead.
that we have on here is that specific user access. This is a lot of times what people don't really think about when they're, trying to solve a problem in their business, is that it may not necessarily be something that is a need to run the business, but it may be something that down the road is beneficial because you can keep users out of QBO, like we talked about. Like when we're talking, QuickBooks Online does inventory, it does basic inventory, and that might be fine for a business, but maybe because of the user access in QBO, it's not a very pinpoint, it's a very broad brush that user access is, with which user access is painted. And I think that sometimes adding another app that is not only specific to a function, but also specific to a user access can also be beneficial, because if you add like an inventory app, something to manage inventory, then you have something that is, like this slide says, a source of truth. It also is providing a specific function, which is managing inventory, but also you're keeping the people who are just doing the warehouse work and they're just working with inventory in the inventory app, and you're keeping them out of the financials. Because in order to give a user in QBO access to manage inventory and do things, you have to give them access to kind of a bunch of other stuff that maybe a business may not want to have those employees see.
Right. So if you have salespeople who have a need to see the customer list and manage those customers and have a need to create sales orders, that sort of thing, that's a great use case for a third-party app. So so the general idea is, if you or if the business is feeling constrained by QBO, they want a user to be able to do something, but they don't want to give them access to everything. That's where apps come in as a possible solution.
Oh,
And
look, we
there are
have some
many.
animation.
Go ahead.
We have some animation in our deck
We,
that I didn't know
we
about.
do. I am. There we go. Ta-da! This is
I
so.
always forget about these.
So in defining what an app can do, there are a couple of different dimensions by which we can measure the use case for an app. So some apps will not integrate very deeply. And
At all. They won't integrate at all. And a good
true,
example of that would be,
creating
you know,
sales orders.
like Hootsuite. You might be using an app to run your business that doesn't have anything to do with QBO. It doesn't really need to have anything to do with QBO. So it may be something like
Like
YouTube.
Toast point of sale for a restaurant.
Well, possibly, but a lot of those are going to have connector apps maybe that might push data into QBO, but
Sure.
they don't integrate, and you don't need them to, is kind of where I'm going with it. So there's a bunch of
Okay.
apps that you can get that may not have anything to do with working and connecting with QBO. And that may be like, you know, your
Maybe a
social
table
media management.
reservation system for a restaurant.
Exactly. Or like social media management or something like that.
And then there are apps that integrate with QBO, but may not be Intuit vetted. So
Uh-huh.
there are third-party apps out there where, because Intuit has made the QuickBooks Online database accessible, they can create apps that just are not listed at apps.com. And that can
Right.
be
And those
something. Yeah.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that can be something where a specific vertical market has decided to develop an app for a bunch of franchisees that you just won't see it on apps.com because it's specific to a franchise.
Or it could be something like ADP.
Mhm.
I know ADP will connect to QBO, but you can't find it in apps.com. Um, there's a couple landscaping apps that I have had clients that they're working with that are not listed on apps.com. And it doesn't mean that those apps aren't good if they're not listed on apps.com. It just means that they haven't jumped through the hoops um, and to get listed on apps.com.
Right.
Which and
But
apps.com are those are the Intuit vetted apps. So anything that you find on apps.com, these are apps that have gone through a technical marketing security review. Intuit asks that they jump through. Can we go back to the other slide real
yes.
quick? to get listed on apps.com. And then that other one that we're talking about is by function. So you may have different apps that are for very generic functions. They may be, it could be, kind of they fit any business. We're looking at like Bryce mentioned, QuickBooks Time or an inventory app. So that would work with any business that needs to track time or track inventory, or something like Bill.com or Melio that kind of work across any business. The other thing is that there might be some very specific apps. One that I'm thinking of is for landscapers. It's called Yardbook. So
Oh, yeah.
that would be one that doesn't, it's very specific. Another one that I love the name of it, it is for asphalt companies. It's called SaaSphalt, SaaS, as in software as a service. And then there's also just specific apps that you may need to run your business. Like I use Boomerang, I use Google Suite and things like that. So there's all sorts of different ways to look at them. So, and the way that we're thinking about them with QBO is how are they going to integrate and what sort of functions are they going to give us?
Right. So now we're going to go to uh, apps.com, which is you can access apps in a couple of different ways. There are ways for certain users to access apps, to sign up for and find apps through
Mm-hmm.
QuickBooks Online. We're really going to focus on going to apps.com. The reason is you can do everything at apps.com. You're going to sign in with your Intuit credentials and be able to search through the app. So, I mean, correct me if I'm overstating the greatness of apps.com, Stacy, but I'm
And
thinking, like, why not just go to apps.com? I can't think of a
so,
reason.
no, I prefer, even though, yes, you can go and you can search for them through QBO, I find that interface to be a little clunky. And also, if I'm searching for an app, I may not be connected to QBO. I may not want to be connected to QBO. I might just be, you know, messing around on my phone while I'm watching Below Deck, which is something that I do often, or whatever Bravo show. So, I just think it's easier just to go directly to apps.com. There's a more robust search feature. I think the interface and just the layout is much more user friendly than trying to search for stuff directly from QBO.
Right. So we can take a look here. We are at apps.com and you can see some of the apps that they have. The really popular ones are listed as cards. And here we see QuickBooks Time. That is actually one of that kind of is in both buckets where it is a third-party app, but it happens to be owned by Intuit now. So it's a third-party app in the sense that it has functions that are not native to QBO, and yet it integrates very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
So Dext is important for receipt capturing, even though there are some functions within QBO. So here at apps.com, you can search by category. They have the list. So let's just click on Manage Customers. So you can see the apps that relate to customer management. So you can do that by category. You can also search for apps either by function or by name.
Or even
So
by a
we,
keyword, if you're
what,
just, yeah, like a specific, any kind of keyword.
oops, if I can spell contractor.
Yeah, even if you just type in contractor and hit enter, any app that has contractor, the word contractor in its description or anywhere in its listing will show up. So you can see there's
So
a bunch of different options here, like Notify for contractors is like an app for like builders. As ServiceMate is really kind of an app that's great for service providers. Like if you're a plumbing company and you're doing repair work. And then there's also timesheet, and then there's also bill payment. So like Melio is bill payment. So that is a way that you can probably pay your contractors. So there's, by putting in contractors, we get a lot of different functions and a lot of different, a wide variety of apps. So
I
that's
love
why
the
we get
name of
those.
Hammer's End. It's almost as good as Sasphalt.
I love Hammer's End. I love the name of it. I haven't had a chance to use it, but like my dad was a builder, so I think that he would really, really have liked that. Like if I had been like, "Hey, Dad, check this out."
So we searched there for contractor, which is one industry. You could search in general for something like time. So here we're seeing all of the time related apps. So there are multiple ways to track time, whether it goes into QBO or not, just to be able to track and deal with time. Um, so that's an option where you can type it in, just really keyword or the function or the industry. I'm always flirting with disaster, so that's not right.
What?
How do I
That's
not
not.
know how to spell architect?
Who does
Because
know how to
because
spell
people,
it? That's a huge word.
here's
Well,
why. It's not that you don't know how to spell it. It's that you're typing in front of an audience, and I am
yeah,
convinced
that's
that
what it
like
is.
typing skills for every person go right out the window when you have to type in front of another person. I'm just
I'm glad you said
I
that. Yeah, because as I started to type it out, I just lost all of my ability to spell or think. And I'm like,
yeah.
how is this possible? So, so we've got just a few for that specific industry, but there are options in that. So that just shows how finite some of these apps get. We saw a lot more for contractors. Um, I'm just spitballing here about different keywords you might put in. And you don't have to do it by keyword. You can look for categories specifically. So any payment apps, we see vendor payment apps here. Tracking expenses is one that's general, and
Mhm.
Expensify is really popular in that arena. And then we've got a lot of receipt-based apps as well. And then we can also you get third-party apps related to payroll, which is interesting. I mean, we know that QBO has payroll built in, but there are some functions tangential to payroll that
Mhm.
are shown here, and there are also just other payroll companies that
Yeah,
integrate with QBO.
exactly. One that's really popular is it's not listed here. I don't know why, but it's an HR and it's called Juvod, Juvod, and it's a pretty sweet little app that I know that there's a lot of pro advisors that use that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
this is a lot of people really like this one.
So, so you can search for apps. Maybe I'll go back to, and it's sort of the question of whether to talk through it. We've got more exciting animation here. Uh,
Ooh.
so you can also search for apps using Google. This should not be a surprise necessarily, but the search terms that are used here may be helpful in searching for apps because we've
Yeah.
got leading with the SaaS software as a service. Um, Seems redundant to put in SaaS and then software, but that's just me. Um, this will help narrow down what kind of apps are out there because some might not be listed on apps.com, even though they have complied with all of the connection. Anything that's going to integrate with QBO has to meet the security profile and the functionality. Whether they're listed on
Right.
apps.com or not is just about more about marketing.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that we bring this up because I have encountered quite a few clients who think that the only apps that they can connect to QBO are listed on Apps.com, and that I don't think is necessarily true. One thing I do want to mention about this is once you do go through and search, you want to make sure that you are checking their FAQs, or if they have a support page, to make sure that those apps, if you want them to, they do integrate somehow with QBO. Moving to the next slide, the other great way to find them is just word of mouth. You may have belong to a business association or a trade association or some kind of Facebook group, and you can just ask them. If you attend conferences, if you're attending a webinar like this, we have, I can't tell you specifically exactly what app to use, but I can say, here are some of my favorites. So that's also other great ways that we can find those apps. Moving to the next one, when we're looking at them, there's a lot of stuff that you want to think about when we start choosing those apps. Yes, you can look at screenshots. Most of them are going to have screenshots. They may have a video of a demo, things like that. I'm a big fan of I'm having done this for so many years and having taught apps for so many years and recommended and been hired as a consultant to help my clients find them. I'm very, very, very picky about apps. If I can't see their pricing on their website, I'm going to move on.
Interesting.
I do not have time to go through a demo, send an email, get on a phone call. The last thing I want to do ever is get on a phone call about this. If I can't see their pricing up front, I'm going to move on. The other thing is I want a free trial. I'm going to avoid any app and not recommend an app that doesn't have a free trial. If they require, the other thing that's what goes with the pricing and a free trial is if they require you to pay for a year in advance. No, I want to go month to month. The other thing to look at, not just self sign up, but you also want to see what is their cancellation policy, because another huge pet peeve of mine that I'm not going to lie, it's going to make me sound like a crazy person, but will send me into almost a blind rage, is when I have to call or email to cancel. If you can let me sign up for the website, you can let me cancel online. So these are all things that you want to look at. And then also you want to see what the QBO integration is. And a good example of this is if you have, say, an auto repair facility. One of the reasons why I have an auto shop that I've been working with for 17 years, and I still have not connected his shop software to QuickBooks, because I cannot try the software. And it is an exceedingly expensive piece of software to connect his shop software to QuickBooks. And if I can't try it to see what it's going to look like when I bring the information in, is it bringing in every single receipt? I don't need that. I want a summary. So you want to see how the integration works. And this is one of the things where it's kind of a hot take, where yes, it probably would be easier to connect it and just spend the money. But because I can't test it, it takes me maybe a couple minutes every month, and I just put one entry in for the sales at the end of the month, and it takes me minutes to do that. So for us, the cost benefit just isn't there. And sometimes, depending on how the QBO integration works, sometimes some apps aren't very good at it. And so if they're not very good at it, you want to say, is it going to be worth it for me to connect this app and start using it? Because how much work am I going to have to do to maintain that connection? So that's another thing. Or is this app that I have no idea what it's going to do, is it even going to be worth the money to have it connected and integrate to QBO? So these are all things that you kind of want to think about when you are signing up, and really take a look at them. I also am not a big fan of if there isn't some kind of free trial. I mention that because I don't have the time or the patience to sit at a demo. Also, everybody has different learning paths, they have different ways that they learn, and you can show me an app and I'm going to be like, that's fantastic and it's great. And as soon as you get done showing it to me, I'm going to forget everything. But if I have a chance to touch it and poke around and click on things, I'm going to remember. So I learn more by doing rather than by just kind of seeing a demo. And also, a demo, they're going to show you the best features of it, right? They're only going to show you that, it can do your laundry and slice your bread, but it's not going to show you that sometimes it smushes the bread so that the bread is unusable when you get done having it sliced, or that, it shreds the laundry every once in a while. So you want to make sure that you can kind of test it.
Yeah.
If you want to, sorry, I'm taking over. If you want to go to the
No,
next slide.
it's fine. I was just going to like put that in context about how valuable it is to hear of these kind of battle scars, because that's we just know that if the app is really as good as they say it is, and even the reviews might puff a bit, the app should sell itself in the sense that
Mhm.
if you're able to try it out and connect it and actually it does what it says it's going to do, of course, the business is going to be willing to pay for it. So why wouldn't an app be willing to, you know, give a free trial, be clear about their pricing, and
Exactly.
allow for self-cancellation?
Exactly. I can't, that's my biggest pet peeve. Um, Going to the next one is how we test those apps. What we're looking at is, does it need to be, does there need to be a collaboration? And if so, how well does that work? Um, we also, I think a big thing that a lot of small businesses don't think about is a learning curve. How easy is it going to be for everybody that has to use this app to learn it? Is it going to take weeks? Is it something that's very intuitive and very simple to learn? Um, you want to think about that. Pricing is always a big feature. What I usually tell people is when I do these kind of consultations is, what is the process that is broken that you are trying to fix with this app? And how much time, AKA money, is it costing you to do it the way that you're doing it now versus the app? And sometimes, like I mentioned with my auto repair shop, with that shop, it's just not worth the extra money and the time that it's going to cost to pay for the app to connect the shop software to QBO versus me just pulling a report once a month and taking literally 3 minutes. Literally, in actuality, 3 minutes a month to go in and enter monthly sales, because we don't need every receipt in QBO. We just need a summary for the month so that we can get the sales tax in and we can record our income. The other thing is, what platforms does it work on? Do you run your office, on a Mac, on a Windows machine? Does it have to look good and work well on mobile devices, and multiple mobile devices? I have one of my best friends and I, we use, this is really funny because his husband is Kevin and my husband is Kevin, and we use an app that is for couples, for just one of my best friends and I to talk to each other. And the reason we do that is so that we don't accidentally send a message that someone shouldn't see to someone else. So if we are gossiping, we don't want to send that message. So we have this couples app that we use, but we just use it to gossip and chit chat. And one of the things for us is it has to be a very specific platform. For him, he wants an app that he can install on his computer versus just a website to log into. He wants a separate app. So when you're thinking about apps, you want to kind of think about what platform or platforms does it need to work on. And the other thing that is very, very important, it's one of the first things I do. I make sure that I can do a free trial. I want to make sure that pricing is listed. And the third thing I do every time I go to a developer's website is search for support. If I have to send an email or, God forbid, make a phone call to support, I'm out. out. If they have chat support, that's fantastic. I'm really glad about that. But for me, best case scenario is some sort of support page or knowledge base where I can go search for any problems. So those are all things that we want to test out, and you want to push the app to the boundaries. Now, when we're talking about connecting it and testing it to see how that sync is with QBO, what we can do there is we can set up a trial. QBO allows you to set up a free trial. I would not use your regular QBO login when you start the free trial. One of the things that I always recommend is if you're using, there's a ton of temporary email addresses. The other thing that a lot of people don't know is that if you are using any kind of Gmail, whether or not it is Google Suite with your own domain or just whatever at gmail.com, one of the things that you can do is you can do a plus sign after your name and before the at. So if I'm testing an app, I'm going to do Stacy plus the app name at Kildall Services. And so I'm creating, I'm not using my Intuit ID for the actual trial. I'm also not junking up my Intuit ID that I have to use every day to log into QuickBooks online.
And just
And
to
it allows,
explain that, if you did use your singular Intuit ID, it just means that each time you log in, you're going to be presented with multiple companies, some of which you may have only used for this test. So it's just
yes.
an anti-clutter.
And when you're signing up for a trial, you don't, unless you're ready for the trial, you don't want to use your actual Intuit ID because it's going to think you've already gotten a trial.
Right.
So, and there's also temporary email addresses that you can use. So the way we implement and we test them is, yes, you can test it on your own. That's the first thing that I always do is I try it and I see how it works just in and of itself. And then I'm going to add it to either a free trial. Bryce and I have demo accounts. Most small businesses don't have, testing demo accounts. We do because we're pro advisors and we're trainers, but you can also just create, a trial, a free trial with QBO. Don't put in your credit card, and after 30 days it's done. And just know that you have 30 days to test that and see how that's going to integrate with QBO. And then also see if the app has any training that is available. See what kind of training they may have. Videos, they may have a specific onboarding team. They may offer some kind of training, or you can even reach out and say, hey, I'm ready to pull the trigger on this. The problem is I need training. Can you provide me some training? And if so, I've got 10 people or 10 users to bring on board. So I'm a big fan of it never hurts to ask, right? All they can do is say no. So those are some of the ways that we're going to implement those apps. And then we have a very basic checklist coming up that you can use. You can customize this. It's a jumping off point. So you can customize this to fit your needs and suit whatever you need. And one of the things that I want to say is, when you're looking at this checklist, what I usually tell my clients is, let's go through, make a list of the processes in your business. What is the process? Where are the pain points in the process? Who owns it? Who makes sure that this, from the minute the customer contacts you until you get paid, who is in charge of that process? I shouldn't be, but I am always very surprised that a lot of times there is no one to make sure that all of the steps are followed. The other thing is, when you're looking at an app, you also want to think about what are the must-haves, what are the must-have features of the app versus what are the nice-to-haves. And you can rank them. You can stack rank them and say, and then say, and give, numbers. You can figure out however you want. But you can say, I need this app to have separate login. I need it to have a Windows app. I need it to have mobile apps. It would be great if I could, customize users or whatever. And then if it hits all of your must-haves, then you can start, when you're comparing one or two apps, you can start to say, okay, app number one has two of my like to haves or from my wish list, whereas app number two only has one. So maybe you go with that one. And the other thing is, don't discount interface. I did a consult in the before times, right before pandemic, and they were evaluating expense reporting apps. And there were two apps they narrowed it down to. And the people in the office liked one of the apps, and the people out in the field liked the other one. And the people in the office liked it because it gave them exactly the reporting that they wanted. The people out in the field liked the other one because the user interface, it was much easier to use for them. So that company ended up going with the one that the people out in the field had chosen, because they were the ones who were inputting the data. They liked the interface better. It was more user friendly, even though it didn't give them exactly the kind of reporting that they want. So sometimes the things on the wish list end up bubbling up to the must-haves. If anything else, I ran with that. Sorry, I just started blabbing about that.
No, I think that's great. I wasn't sure if we want to show, just kind of show the details here on a specific app.
Yeah, I think it would be really beneficial to go through, and I was just going
Yeah.
to ask, can you pop over to Appscom and just kind of walk through to a certain point what it looks like once you finally choose an app, you know, the overview, the pricing, all the different tabs that we have, and then actually getting, you know, clicking the Get App Now and walking through how that goes. And I'll let you do that because you're driving
Okay.
the
So
screen.
here we're in one of the apps that's pretty popular. It's called Notify. It's related to contractors, obviously. And just to show you the tabs, each of the apps will have these tabs. Not all apps will, as Stacey mentioned, some might not show their pricing. They're supposed to, but it doesn't always happen. But here you can get an overview, see a video, and get a sense for what the app does. And
And
then
most of them are going to have, they'll have a video, and they'll also have a bunch of screenshots as well that you can kind of flip through. It's like a little flip book.
so you can read what it's going to do. And I think for me, again, this is like my experience is I want it to tell me functionally what it's going to do. If there's a lot of really fluffy talk here in the benefits, that raises my skepticism. And
Yeah.
you know, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying that's that's what it is for me. So then we can see the pricing, so you can very easily tell whether this is going to be in the ballpark for cost benefit for a business. And then on the reviews, something actually my kids taught me is sometimes it's best to look at the worst reviews first.
I always look at the worst ones first.
And then you can get a sense for whether the user may not be the right user type or is frustrated kind of for the wrong reasons, nothing to do with the app functionality, or whether there are specific highlights where the person's saying, you know, I followed their connection method to a T, and here's the actual error or the way it came in too detailed or too much of a summary. Then you know that it's that at least that particular comment is legit. It still may not be an issue for the particular business that you're working with. And then there's even a similar, so you can look at other apps that do some similar things just to get an idea. And then there is a FAQ, so you can go through that. And I think this is a great example, and it's got support listed here, so you can get a sense for the app overall. Testing is believing from my perspective. So once you are ready to try it, what I would do is get a free trial of QBO. I can never remember the site. So you can go here to, it's probably going to take us to qbo.intuit.com. So here, there's a try it free radio button, so you can choose QBO Plus, create the company. And then once that is set, then when you choose Get App Now, it's going to have you, go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing. Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
All of
Yeah.
this.
You just sign in with your Intuit credentials. I'm not going to do it here because there are multiple companies, multiple layers, but essentially you're saying here, this is the QBO company that I want to connect this app. And then it's just that simple. You're going to say, basically connect the app, and then there's going to be potentially some other wizard about uh, in what detail the app is going to connect, and what accounts, categories, all of that sort of setup. And then you're in a free trial, so you've got a full functional QBO company. You've got a fully functional, in most cases, trial for the third-party app, so you can really test use cases very specifically about how the business is going to use the app. And so that really gives you the, oh yeah, this is definitely going to work for the business. It solves for the problem that we have. Or, hey, this isn't exactly what we had in mind. You can move to another app or decide, like Stacy mentioned, there are some processes where you think maybe an app's going to solve the issue, but ultimately you find out it's going to be more babysitting for the app than it is going to be benefit for
Yeah.
the business. That can happen, and that should be an okay thing.
Yeah, and it's fine. And that's always my hot take about apps is that you don't always need one. At all. So Brett is saying, is there a special code for apps that integrate with QBO? No, anything that's listed on Appscom works with QuickBooks Online. So it's gone through, it's been vetted. If it's not listed on Apps.com, you can find it anyway. You just want to check their support and make sure that it does integrate with QuickBooks. For QuickBooks Desktop, you're going to go to a different website. You can go to apps.com and you can go to the developer site and see if they integrate with desktop. But when we're talking about QuickBooks apps for desktop, you're going to go to desktop.apps.com. And that will show you that is specific for QuickBooks desktop versions, Pro, Premier, Enterprise, or as it's now being called, Pro Plus, Premier Plus, because moving forward, everything is going to be subscription with Intuit.
Any other questions for Bryce or Stacy at this point? Anything that anybody wants to jump out and say, hey, by the way, you inspired me to ask this. Go right ahead and do that.
Just stunned silence so far, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of apps. Just to say how great they are.
No, that's
They're so
sweet.
wonderful,
Thank
Paula.
you.
Thank you for that. They are wonderful. I have a couple of things that kind of came up with me as you guys were talking. I know a lot of people are using things like Slack and Monday when it comes to trying to organize their schedules and everything. And there's also third-party invoicing, which you kind of covered that a little bit too. But I was just curious when it comes to those people that are working off of a calendar and they use their calendar possibly to attach invoicing to give a client, for example, does that interact well with QuickBooks, or is it only after the sale's made instead of the salespeople who are going out there making bids and quotes and all of that? Because I don't want to confuse real accounting with potential accounting. So I don't know what your
So
thoughts are.
Intuit actually has an app that is called Invoice with Google Calendar. I'm not sure if it's still around, but it did give sort of that functionality to kind of, but what it's doing is it's pulling information from the calendar and then allowing you to create the invoice and send it from QBO. I did test it and it worked as well, but it's been a few years. But there is something like that. I don't know of any others, and probably because I just don't do that. Everything that I do is prepaid. So And what I do for my process is I schedule the appointment, and then I just go into QBO and send the email, and I send the link to I use Google Meet, so I send the link in the invoice, and just make sure it says, you have to pay 24 hours. But I'm sure there are others, but I know that it's called Invoice with Google Calendar, which is very uninspired, but yeah, very descriptive name, that will do like what you're asking. And I'm sure there's others that are out there that do that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Great.
Oh,
Well,
Paula, you're great too. Paula says just to say how great they are. Paula, you're
yeah,
also great.
yeah, she's wonderful like that. So, so, so as far as I know, there's plenty of different ways to adapt and change. I love the fact that you guys have the today connected some of the apps that people are trying to use out there, and you pointed us in the right direction to find the ones that are already okayed by Intuit to really be a part of QuickBooks. But it looks like there's plenty to choose from. So I think that was just one page of many, probably each time you were doing a search. So
Oh yeah.
it's very good to know, because a lot of people are they think their business. I was curious when it comes to online businesses, for example. There's a lot of apps out there as well to help people, like Square, taking uh,
Mm-hmm.
their information for credit cards and allowing them to be able to get paid that way. Does that integrate well?
So
Yeah, there is
usually,
there
oh,
is
go
an
ahead.
app for Square, but the big thing that this brings up is that there are a lot of apps out there. There are actually a small subset that are the most commonly used apps.
Mhm.
And the reason for that, I'm
It's
sorry,
okay. Take a moment, Bryce. It's okay. It's okay.
getting choked up here. The reason for that is that of all the apps that are out there, the ones that have really become popular are the ones that focus in on the need for the most businesses. And so the Square app is one of those. There are some with payroll and QuickBooks Time, obviously, Bill.com for payables. So when you think about the total list of apps, that's somewhere 500 or 600 apps. Really, that should not be so overwhelming, because when you think about the apps that are most commonly used, the Intuit doesn't really talk about the numbers of prevalence of use, but I'm thinking 20 apps or fewer are the ones that most companies are using.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
So important not to be overwhelmed.
Good point. Last chance, everybody. Any final closing comments you'd like to leave us with today?
No, just you know
Well,
what? The only thing I want to say is if you think you need an app and you're realizing like you can't find one that fits, it's maybe because you don't need an app. Like you don't
yeah.
always need an app. You could just do the do, is what I always say. Like just do the work.
Yeah, I
It's
was
not,
going to say that a different way, in that I feel it's important to start with the business process that's a pain point and think
yeah,
about how much time that takes.
exactly.
Even if it takes 10 or 15 minutes a day or a week, you have to consider, is the app going to make that go to zero, or are you just replacing time you're spending every day or every week with another process for that time and adding an app on top of it. So
And the
think
other
about the
thing is
business principle.
I have one more thing to say going off that, and then I promise I'll shut up because I know everybody wants to get out of here. One of the things is I have offered over the years, over and over and over again to my clients, you can do this. We have this app and it does this. And if you want, we can implement that. Or I can do it and it's going to cost X amount of money per month. And I would say across the board, it is a very rare situation where my bookkeeping clients are going to say, yeah, let's do the app. They would much rather pay me more because they know that it is a person. They know that it's not AI, it's not automated, and they know that if something goes wrong, it's probably user related, me, and it's probably pretty easy to fix. Because if I'm the one that made the mistake, I'm the one that can fix the mistake as well. So that's all I have to say about that.
That's really great. And I'm one of those types. I would definitely be, anything that's a little extra to make sure there's somebody I can call to get it solved is way better for me than searching around on the internet for 2 days to try to figure out what button it is I need to push to make
Yeah,
these things right. So
exactly.
I learned differently. Like you were talking about earlier, I'm not the person who goes and says, hey, let me just click on everything and figure out how it works. No, 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 no. I'm the guy that you sit down, show me how it works, and I will remember what you showed me. But I need to
Oh,
actually see it and feel it while it's going on. But we all learn differently, like you said,
yeah,
and that's
exactly.
important.
Like I can go sit in a conference session and be like, yes, yes, yes. I love it. I'm gonna do all of this, and I'll walk out of
No,
the room and like gossamer. It's just gone.
fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, all right.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing today. We very much appreciate it. And speaking of sharing, I just want to share with everybody a little bit of some things coming up and remind you that there will be a survey today. Please let us know how we're doing with our training and development for all of you. We definitely want to hear your input so we'll know that we're going the right direction and we're helping. And we also would love your valuable input on what to prepare for the future. So take time to fill out that little 2-minute survey and send it back the feedback. We appreciate it. We do have some upcoming webinars. Believe it or not, still yet this close to the end of the month, there are still 2 more to go. Building a high quality email list, part 3, Ashley Cook's series this month has been amazing. And if you've missed part 1 and 2, just to let you know, I'm going to put that in the chat box here in just a second so that you can follow our link, go to our website and our YouTube channel to go backwards in time to find that. We also have coming up tomorrow, inflation and paying your employees. Not that inflation happens or is happening, but when it does, paying your employees is pretty important. And Rebecca Schultz is going to be presenting that. So we're looking forward to it. If you have any other questions, please go to the sbdc.nctc.edu. That is our website for more information about how you can get scheduled with an advisor about your company, or you're wanting to start a company possibly. We're happy to schedule you with an advisor so that you can get some good advice out of the gate to try to help you with that. We also are funded, and we would love to thank the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office, and North Central Texas College for making all of this possible. And thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time. If you get an opportunity, we'll see you in about just a few hours. Have a great day and a really amazing week. Thank you again, Bryce. Thank you again, Stacy. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, you too. Bye bye.